Hello, hello, and welcome to Making Connections with Allie Presents. And my name is Lennis Woods Mullins, and I obviously am not Allie. I am filling in for her. She's had a family emergency, and she gave me the honor of coming in and standing in for her. So glad to be here and honored to be able to talk about a topic that I think is very apropos for this particular time of the year. Tomorrow is Valentine's Day. We happen to be broadcasting in February of 2021. And of course, that time of the year is known as the month of love, affairs of the heart, romance, and all of that. And we have with us a guest today who is an expert in that. He has an organization called Romance by Choice, and his name is Bill, I think that's right, Scarzetti. And Bill, welcome to the program. Romance by Choice actually is a course that someone can take, correct?
Correct.
Okay, right. So
One-on-one coaching program.
one-on-one coaching. Okay. So tell me first of all a little bit about you and how you became so passionate about the idea of helping people find romance.
Well, it started many years ago after I had a failed marriage at a young age.
Mhm.
And when I saw what happened that when the marriage broke up, I said, how does something that starts out so joyously crash and burn in a rubble of heartbreak and disaster? And that led me to think about maybe I should do some research to see if there's a better way. So I started to read books. I was interviewing a lot of people, especially anyone who I met who told me they were divorced. I would say to them, tell me how you met your spouse. Why did it end?
Right.
And after a while, I began to notice patterns that were developing. So I took those patterns and research that I had been doing, and I started to do work with my friends. I just started to play with it. You know, someone would tell me, oh, I just met someone, or I just had a first date. And I'd start talking about all these things. And eventually, it led me to put together this methodology that I use. And I decided I used to do it as programs at places like the Learning Annex in Manhattan and Parents Without Partners and Jewish community centers. And then I decided to write a book, but I didn't like it as a written book. So I decided to make it an audio book. And then I decided I would put music in the audio book to give it
Yeah.
the emotional component, because I realized that so many people don't really know what the feelings of love are. How should someone feel about you? How should you feel about someone else? So I researched lots of music, listened to songs. Finally, I put a list together, and then I created 6 albums that go with the audiobook. And there's music
Wow.
in the audiobook. So the albums are for to prepare for love, the attitude you need for love, 2 albums for a man to give a woman, and 2 albums for a woman to give a man.
Okay.
And it creates a very interesting thing for people, because I've often found that many people don't listen to the words to songs. They listen to the melody, they listen to some of the words, and if they kind of like the whole vibe of the song, they just think it's a great song, but they don't always listen to the words. So some songs are not really love songs. They're either breakup songs or cheating songs or
What
stuff
about
like
that?
this. So I had to make sure that all the words to the songs were there, because that's the important part. I
Well, there was something you said, and I'm really curious. You said you had noticed some patterns in those people whose marriages or relationships broke up. What were some of those recurring patterns that you noticed, especially since you based your course on some of that?
I think the biggest one is that people would say, everything was great when we first met. We were having a lot of fun. Things were great. Then we got married. Then, we had kids or problems developed, and then they weren't prepared to handle them because they really did not know who the person was that they were marrying. They knew some things about the person, but they never took the time to think about many of the other characteristics that a person needs. And issues happen. Someone gets ill, and then the other partner doesn't want to deal with it, so they leave. Or financial issues. religious issues, different religions, and then they have kids, and then they get upset about how they're going to raise the kids, and finances, and it just, the list goes on and on and on. It takes quite a while for us to go through the list
Right.
and identify what is imperative to you. And see, the key is that most people, that's why I call the program Romance by Choice, because most people do romance by chance. Because, we've all been programmed by our parents, our friends, the media, movies, everything we see as to what we're supposed to have.
Mm-hmm.
And so much of what we get involved in is visual. You see someone, you like the way they look, you have a few laughs, and boom. But it's not their choice. So many people are trying to live up to what their parents want them to marry or have as a partner.
Yes.
And they don't. So the whole idea of this thing is to clear out all the stuff that's been put in their heads and get down to who they are, how they choose to live the rest of their life, and who do they choose to live it with.
Now,
And
that
it's
was
their
what I was
choice.
going to ask you. That's very interesting because I was going to ask you, what is it about your course that helps them peel back the layers in terms of who they are and in terms of the kind of partner they should be looking for and what their expectations should be?
Well, the thing is, see, so many people inside their hearts know what they would really like, but they never give themselves permission to make themselves happy.
Mm-hmm.
Because they always want to do something that makes somebody else happy, or that they get accolades. Oh, this one got a beautiful wife. This one has a fantastic husband. All these things that they want the outside world to see about them. And they never really take the time to say, what is my choice? What do I choose? What's going to make me happy?
Mm-hmm.
And forget about your friends and relatives and everybody else. So a lot of what we do is we work on is to get them to give themselves permission to seek what they choose.
That's
Empower them.
interesting. That's interesting about the idea of seeking permission, being empowered to make a choice. Why do you think it is that people feel like they need to actually have permission? I think in many cases, people are already thinking that they're giving themselves permission to be happy. So, what is it that you do in your program that helps them to look at it in a different way in terms of seeking?
Again, it's just the way we go through the coaching.
Mm.
We ask them to be, first off, I ask people to be present, to think in today's mind, not what you thought about 10 years ago. 10 years ago, you were a totally different person looking maybe for different things. But let's get to today. Who are you today? And what are the things that are important to you? Your career, where you live, what other things are involved in your life. What other things are involved in your life? So when people start to think about that, then they're able to make choices. And that's a big thing, to give someone the power to choose for themselves.
And it's interesting too because I think a lot of people think they're operating under choice. But you mentioned something that was very key. That many of our opinions and attitudes and perceptions are actually governed by society. The things that we've seen, the things that we are continually programmed all the time. I guess in your program, there's a certain amount of deprogramming that takes place.
Oh, yeah. We go through it. There's a whole section too about how do you develop the attitude to survive in the singles world until
Hmm.
you find the person you're looking for.
That's what I was going to ask you about. I have written a couple of questions, and what I was going to ask you about is why is attitude so important?
Well, see, because again, most people come at life from a negative perspective. I'm never going to find someone. There's no good people out there. All of these things that they say that sabotage what they really would like to find. So a lot of the work is teaching. We use things like science of deliberate creation, conscious language, feng shui, positive mental attitude There are different tools to help people keep themselves in a positive mindset. Because if you do the program correctly, when you start meeting people, there are people that you'll meet that may have some of the qualities you're looking for, but not all of them, or missing some parts of them. And the key is to end it. You're not going to change someone. So you
Yes.
need to have that stickability to be able to stay with the program and believe you will find the person you're looking for.
Okay, so one of the things is not to necessarily negotiate or compromise. Stick
Correct.
to those things that you know you really need. And so many people compromise, I guess, because they lose patience, their timeline, or in some cases, the woman's biological clock starts ticking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know I certainly have when I was in the dating world. Everything was great until it wasn't. And when I look back at it, a lot of times it wasn't because some of those key components that were important to me, I compromised on. And that's not to say that the other person was bad, it just wasn't a match for me. So I guess part of this is being willing to wait and to be patient.
Absolutely. You have to be patient. You have to have, as I say, the stickability to stay in the world while you're doing this. But you have to also realize you can't change people. People don't change the basis of who they are. Yeah, maybe you can get someone to change their hair color or change the way they dress, but the basic components inside a person aren't going to change. So if you don't have that in the person you're dating, then you might as well move on to someone else. But people get desperate, people get lazy, they get anxious, and they make bad choices.
Well, I guess partially that's where someone like you might come in terms of one-on-one. Why a romance coach? What is it that you do to help them, stay on the narrow path and to be patient and
Well,
to do the things you teach them to do?
well, see, first off, as I said, we use my audio book as the basis for the program.
Mhm.
So that has sections to it. And they go through the different sections, and then we integrate the musical albums into the different sections.
Mhm.
And so they always have something to go back to. When the going gets tough or they start feeling like, oh, I don't know if I can do this, they can go back to the book. All the
Oh,
instructions are there so that
okay.
that can fire them up.
Now,
Um,
how is this different, let's say, than a dating service?
okay. Well, a dating service depends on now. There are dating services and there are online dating sites.
Okay.
Okay. Dating services can be effective if they have the right kind of people, but it's a small pot that you're looking for someone in. When you go to a dating site like Match or Silver Singles or any of these dating sites that are out there, that's like going to a giant supermarket. You have many choices. So if you understand who you are, and I also work with their dating profiles that they put online, what photos they put up of themselves, and what they say will help them attract to them the people they're looking to meet rather than the people they've been meeting.
Right, exactly.
And, the photos that people put online, it's amazing. If you've ever had the opportunity to look at dating sites, the pictures people put online are mind blowing. That they don't, if they were going to sell their car, they'd wash it, polish it, make it look beautiful. But when they want to put themselves online, they take horrible pictures. They take selfies in their car and they put it online and they think this is going to attract into their life someone wonderful.
Wow.
Or they'll have 5 pictures and everyone looks like a different person.
Mm.
So you don't know who the real person
Who the
is.
real one is, and automatically the credibility begins to slip.
Right.
And I know we've got dating sites and things like that, but where do you tell people they should go to meet people?
Well, I mean, other than dating sites, it's
Mhm.
through their normal course of life. They have to be outside. Now, unfortunately, with the pandemic, that has left dating sites as the main place to meet people. But before the pandemic, you could meet people anywhere. And part of our program is to teach people how to present themselves when they are out in public, how to walk, how to own the room, how to control the environment so that you attract attention. As opposed to, you probably have noticed many times you'll go someplace and see somebody walks in, they look very sheepish, they're kind of slumped over. It's like, like no reason to look at that person. But when someone walks in the room and they know how to control their presence and they walk in with some life to them, everybody turns around and looks.
Wow. That's true. Walking into the room with that presence. And it really doesn't have a whole lot to do with the way you look. It has to do a lot with the energy that you bring with you. When you're saying a positive attitude, being approachable, and having an air of optimism, and an air of energy that attracts people. And you're right. You're walking into a room like, oh, this is going to be a hot mess. No one's going to want to talk to me. I don't even know why I'm here. But you're probably right. No one knows. People sense these things, right?
True.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting because I haven't been on the dating thing for like years. I've been married almost 20 years, my second husband. And prior to that, I was only on the market, so to speak, for 2 years. And I was married 13 years to my first husband. So it's been a long, long time. So let's say for someone like me, I'm 63 years old. So for someone who's in their 60s and hasn't, maybe they were married for a long time, and I know you've done work with widows, what kinds of things do you tell them to help them to feel confident? Many feel like that it's over for them.
Oh, well, see, that again, it's very interesting because when you work with older adults, it does take a little more to empower them. Mm-hmm. However, the same questions apply. Who are you at this point in your life, and how do you choose to live the rest of your life, and who do you choose to live it with? And when you get clear on that, there's been, especially in the world of men, they haven't realized, because when men in their 60s and 70s and stuff grew up, women were stay-at-home. Right. A woman in her 60s 50 years ago was an old woman. Mm-hmm. Today, a woman in her 60s is alive.
Right.
Okay, they don't look, if you could stack them side by side, you wouldn't recognize. You'd think a woman in her 60s is probably in her 40s.
Right, that's right.
Okay, so it's a different world, but men have not really caught up with that idea yet. Mm-hmm. And as a result, a man in his 60s or 70s is looking to date a 40-year-old woman. And when I work with them, I say, why do you want to date your daughter? It's a different generation.
Funny, because I'm sure that's a real wake-up call. It's like, well, that's true. And that's one of the major things that women have a tendency to complain about, is that men their age, if they're older, want younger women. And also that younger women also think they want older men. But I would be curious to see how successful those relationships actually are when you have so many people who are looking for people who are 20 years younger than they are. How does that work out? What's the success rate or something like that?
Well, again, that to me is a, how do I put this? That's kind of like the death knell to a relationship. Because I say to men, oh, you're 70 years old. You want a 50-year-old woman. What's going to happen in 10 years when you're 80? Okay? Do you think that that woman is going to still want to be with you? Because you have different energy levels. The whole world is different. Now, a lot of times it's because of money and things of that type that people, but let's take that off the table. If you're really looking for a relationship, then the age gap should probably be 5 to 10 years. The man 5 to 10 years older than the woman. And that's mainly because of the maturity factors.
Mm-hmm. And also just common life experiences as well. Having some shared experiences, maybe not personally, but shared experiences generationally.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
I can see that.
So you can have a much richer life together.
And something to talk about. Some things that are already common things. And, not just generationally, you want to have some commonality and understanding. But I would imagine when it comes to just dealing with the opposite sex, you have to have some basic understandings, maybe even undo some key programming that we've had over the years.
Well, that's another part of the program, is the differences between men and women, because we are two different animals. We speak different languages. And that's where a lot of the problems come from in relationships, is that we don't understand how to speak to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I hate to say this, guys, but we haven't evolved since cavemen.
So funny, because I was talking with my husband before he left today, saying, I'm going to be having a conversation with a guy who talks about romance and all that. And he says, well, I guess I probably funk in that area. And I was like, well, yeah, you could use some improvement. It's interesting because it wasn't like that when we were dating. But over time, there's a complacency that takes place. I've been working from home for 13 years. He retired early and began working from home too. So we're together all the time. And so something just kind of began to slip, not, right away, just over a period of time, to the point where it's a conversation. It's an average conversation. So we want to do for Valentine's Day. And I said, I don't know. What do you want to do? So, well, I asked you first, what do you want to do? And so I'll say, okay, well, let's go out to lunch and let's go buy See's candy and buy each other's favorite candy and so on and so forth. Silence. Nothing. I said, well, don't you want to do that? He said, well, I asked you what you wanted to do. But there you go. Those kinds of things, communicate, but not really. And I find that a lot of times with men, sometimes there's this issue around communication when it comes to feelings. And when you're working with men, how do you help them with that, to help kind of open up a little bit? Because women are always talking about feelings.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, again, it goes back to empowering men to realize that, they don't always have to walk around like, this macho person. They're entitled to have feelings. They have the feelings, but they don't want to express them because they think it might make them look weak.
Right.
Okay? And when men get in touch with that they can actually express their feelings, it doesn't make them look weak, it improves their relationships. When they learn the communication aspect, because very often women insult men when they speak to them, and that's what causes the man to shut down.
Yes, that's true. And that's a whole nother conversation that I want to have when we get back. We're going to take a break right now. You're listening to Making Connections with Allie, and my name is Glennis Woods Mullins, and I'm pitch hitting for Allie today. And we have with us Bill Scalzetti, and we're talking about romance by choice and all the wonderful things you need to be thinking about when you're looking for that special love. So we will be back in just a moment.
Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom over me. And before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom. Freedom. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom over me. Over me. And be
are you, sir?
Mr. President, this is Lester Townsend. He's 108 years old.
No, he's not. You're lying about your age. you're
the grandson of a slave.
Oh,
shaking hands
man.
with the president of the United
That's something
States.
right there. So how come you look so good? What's your secret? Huh?
I haven't found it.
What are you eating?
Whatever they bring me. I never thought I'd live to see
Well, what an honor what an honor to see you. I'm just going to try to make sure I look half as good as you when I'm 100. Much less 108.
So
All right. So nice to see you, sir. God bless you.
Wow, that's amazing. And we must remember, even though this is the month of love, it is also the month that we celebrate here in this country, Black History Month. And those images bring back so many memories for many Americans, regardless of your cultural background. So thank you for taking that trip down memory lane with us. We're here now with Bill Scalzetti, and we're talking about Romance By Choice and his wonderful program that helps people who are single to connect with the right person. And I was just looking at your site, Bill, and there are a couple of interesting articles on your site. In fact, you can find out more about his program by going to romancebychoice.com. That's romancebychoice.com. And one of the articles was talking about why, let me see, I've lost my place. Okay, why can't I find a good man and a good woman? That is a very common question. I have girlfriends who are saying that right now. In fact, I have girlfriends who basically just give it up. They might have been married once and they're either widows or they're divorced. And they're just like, girl, ain't nobody out there for me. I'm giving up. But, why is that? Why do we seem to have such a difficult time even finding someone to date?
Again, it comes down to the choice, the way people go about seeking someone to date. If you go to a dating site, depends on what sites they go to.
Mm-hmm.
It takes patience to see someone. And then when you do meet someone on a dating site, one of the things I encourage my clients to do is to do not do a lot of texting or emailing with people you meet on a dating site.
Mm-hmm.
Someone is of interest to you, you want to meet them, you say, let's set up a Zoom call. You have a Zoom date, therefore you get to see who the person is. And if they've got 10-year-old photos online, you know right away that they're lying. You also get to see their personality. It's even better than a telephone call, because on a telephone call, you're only hearing a voice. But now you can see them, you can see their eyes, you can see how they talk, you can see their mannerisms. The only thing you really can't tell from a Zoom date is whether they're 5'6" or 6'6". Okay, it's a little hard to see, but that's not the important, that shouldn't be an important issue at that point. The first point is this person someone that I'd like to invest some time again with someone, see them a second time? Because I always tell them the only reason for date number one is to see if there's a date number two. And the only reason for date number two is to see if there's a date number three, and so on. A lot of people get too excited right away. They see someone and right away they're hearing, seeing old shoes and rice. You know what I mean? It's like,
oh my gosh, I can remember very well. Oh, deja vu. I feel like I've said this before. I can remember very well in my late 20s and 30s, almost every single guy I met, I was wondering, is he the one? Is he the one? Instead of just meeting a person in his merits. And that's because my biological clock was beginning to tick because I was 30, still not married, no kids. And so I began looking, to see if he was the one, which is totally ridiculous because I was going just by the way they looked, which is probably the number one first problem of why I got married before that time. But I think it's pretty common.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. So that's where we come back to, getting to know the person before you start thinking, oh, this is the one I'm going to marry.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And this is because otherwise people get themselves on the wrong road. And then things happen. And then, of course, when they meet and then they have sex and then the sex is good, they forget everything else.
Euphoria.
Yeah. And then it's too late by the time they realize that, oh my God, I'm with the wrong person.
Yes. Now, you had mentioned that you've got different modules in your coaching program, and one of them has to do with music. And before I came on, right before my husband left, I was talking to Alexa, my new friend, and I said, Alexa, oops, wait a minute. She's going to come on. Never mind, Alexa. Stop. Okay. She will take over this interview. I'm telling you right now. Okay, we won't say her name. That's that little round black ball back there. Please play some music by Frank Sinatra. And before my husband left, he was hugging me and kissing me. I'll see you later. Can't wait to get back home. That kind of thing. And all I did was play that music as an experiment. And it was amazing. What kinds of music is in your anthology that you have with the audiobook and the coaching?
There is, the songs are from many different, there's country western songs, there's modern songs, there's Sinatra and all of them. But then I had to re-record all these songs. I had to buy the rights to them. So I'm not using Frank Sinatra singing the song. It's a Sinatra song. Song he may have made popular. But it's, again, it's all about the words and the message in the song.
Wow. It was interesting because I've listened to Frank Sinatra off and on all my life because my parents would listen to his music. And you're right. Normally, you don't always listen to the words, you're listening to the music and the tone, but there was something about the phraseology of a Frank Sinatra song where you could hear the words. And looking back at it, based on what you're just saying about words and all of that, it might be one of the reasons why his songs were always considered so romantic. It was his phrasing. You found yourself listening to what he was saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you got the strings going on and all. I thought that was so interesting when I tried that experiment. What do you recommend needs to happen on that very first date if they're not Zooming? Let's say pre-pandemic.
Okay. So pre-pandemic, again, if it was the first time you're meeting someone, I usually suggest meet them at a Starbucks on a Saturday afternoon at 2 o'clock or something. Because if the meeting, you can figure you're investing 20 minutes. So you go into Starbucks, you meet the person. If the person, again, is totally not what you're looking for, you leave. 20 minutes, half an hour, you're done. If the person is somebody that's intriguing, you may invest a little more time with them, talking to them, getting to know them. But the most important thing is getting to know them, having conversation where you're able to bring up some of the things that are important to you or imperative to you. And not as it's not like you're sitting there like with the FBI and you're getting quizzed.
I was going to say, you bring out list the questions, say, okay, so.
It's done through casual conversation. Because again, when you're investing in your love life, so if you think of it as an investment, then you have to think of it, okay, is there going to be a return on this investment? So why waste time just because you're lonely with someone? That's like throwing money away. So sometimes when you can relate to different things, that's why I use the word invest a lot. Talk about invest your time. Because they want a return on it, they want to do it right.
But do you look for reasons to continue the conversation and perhaps dating this person, or do you look for reasons not to?
Well, it's kind of the same thing, because if you have an issue, I also tell my clients, I say, there's something I ask, I say, what are your lemons? What's wrong with you? If you have something that's a lemon, let's turn around and make it sweet lemonade. So that you're not hiding things. Because see what happens, a lot of times people have issues. Maybe it's a health issue. And when they meet someone, they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to mention it. So time goes on, and then all of a sudden that health issue appears and the other person leaves because they didn't want to deal with it.
Right.
Okay. So sometimes you work things into a conversation to see how it's going to look. And, you know, because if somebody's going to leave you, let them leave you on date 1 or 2.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
So these are things that are all important. A lot of you can't be an accident looking for a place to happen.
Right, exactly. And that reminds me of something else that is very common these days with dating. And that's the whole idea with dating and children. How do you deal with that, and how do you keep the romance going when you're dating someone with children?
Well, again, the first question is, if you're dating someone with children, you need to know in advance how many children you would accept. Okay, so you have to say, well, okay, if I meet someone who has 1 child and I don't have any children, okay, that's fine, 1 child. If I meet someone who has 4 children, that's too much for me to deal with. So even if the person looks great, sounds great, they have 4 children, the children are young, it's too much for you to deal with. Don't try to change it, because it'll only come back to haunt you. Now, if those 4 children might be in college or out of college, that may be a different issue. And the same with, let's say you have 2 children and they have 2 children. Do you want 4 children to have to deal with? And the ages of the children. You have 2 children that are 3 and 5, and they have 2 children that are 12 and 14.
Yeah, I definitely have a cautionary tale about that, because I have 4 daughters, and my husband had 1 son, and altogether age-wise, they were steps in terms of age. The youngest was 9, the oldest was 17. And if we had it to do over again, we would have waited for all of my kids to have been gone to college, instead of having some, I have one on the way to college, 2 like in high school, or 3 in high school, whatever. It was crazy because we had different parenting styles. And that was not something we had anticipated, because we grew up together. We knew each other very well. Our life experience as parents was totally different. How we were raised, evidently, totally different. We didn't ask those questions. Didn't even think about that. It's like, oh, well, we've known each other for years. We grew up together. This is cute. We know he's 4 years old, being married finally at 45, But there was that other, elephant in the room that we just weren't addressing. That was child dynamic, which really took all the romance away for a good 8 years. And then once they moved out of the house, it was almost like dating again. It was like, wow, that's right. Hey, that's my husband. That's my wife. Finally connecting in a way that we should have connected after we first got married. But we didn't ask those critical questions.
Right. See, that's the thing. So people have to, you have to know what you will accept. And when you know what you will accept, makes your life so much better.
And don't compromise.
Right. Don't compromise. And of course, along the way, when issues like children come up, if they're, you each have 1 child, but there's an age difference, this is something you have to talk about.
I'm looking at all your different things in terms of how your program works. I'm looking online right now at it. And it says, first of all, you discover yourself. And then it says that you get started where you are right now. Then it says develop an outline. Now, what does that outline entail?
Well, the outline is what we're talking about, is who am I looking for? And the outline is, okay, I want someone, we talk about the height, the weight, hair, no hair, age.
Break it all down. Okay.
All that stuff. You go from the very, as though, you remember the old song, 100 Pounds of Clay?
Yes.
Okay, that's what you're going to do. You're going to build the person you're choosing.
Okay. And then as you're building that outline, you ask, what do you really choose? I guess that's fine tuning what you're putting down. Then you say they need to practice and believe. What do they practice and what do they believe?
That's the whole attitude section.
Okay.
See, you have to understand when, you first start doing anything new. I don't care whether it's going to the gym, learning how to dance, whatever. You have to practice. You're not going to knock it out of the park the first time you meet someone.
Wow. Okay, that's true.
Okay.
That's true.
You know, so you have to understand how the whole, you have to be able to feel comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
When you're comfortable in your own skin and who you are, and you go to meet that person, whether it's online or it's in a coffee shop, you know, then they're meeting you. They're not meeting somebody else who's posing as you.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And then you talk about developing a profile of the ideal partner. That's pretty self-explanatory. And then there's a profile analysis. What is that?
Well, you have to think it through. You have to, you know, you have to go through everything. When you're discovering the person that you're trying to meet,
Mm-hmm.
you have to think about all of it, their entire profile, so that when you find someone and you start checking off the boxes in your mind, you're saying, okay, this is really the person I'm looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm willing to commit to this person.
Mm-hmm.
And
then
hopefully along the way, you're finding out from them
mm-hmm.
similar things about you.
Yeah, that's wonderful. You do want them to feel the same way about you. I guess it happens sometimes where you think you found the right guy, but it's just not a match on the other side. I guess that can happen
Exactly.
time to time, but that's where your patience and belief comes in. Yeah, yeah. It's a process.
It is. It's work. I tell my clients, you've got to put in the work. This isn't quick as a cheeseburger stuff.
I know that whole "I love at first sight" thing is so not fair.
Well, that's lust at first sight.
Right, exactly. Or like sometimes I wish they didn't have the word in the vocabulary. Take out the word um, perfectionism or perfect, because there is no such thing. And still, we set ourselves up by talking about it that way. Same thing with love and romance and the whole thing. It's most of it's founded on things that aren't really true. And one thing I've learned about today, though, is, and I'm going to share this with my daughters, all who are unmarried, was the idea of peeling back the layers and finding out who you really are and who you really want. And then taking the time to do an analysis of that and then be patient and don't compromise. Up to this point, I have met most of their compromises.
Yes, that's what people do.
Now, are you married, Bill?
Yes, I am.
Okay, and how did you find your wife?
We were introduced to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, by the time I was all into my program, so I knew exactly what I was looking for.
Wow. Okay.
And when I got to her house and I rang her doorbell and she opened the door right there, I said, unbelievable. First off, the way she looked was everything I could ask for.
Wow.
And then we went to dinner and we talked. And I'm like, wow, all these things going on in my head. Like, wow, yeah, this is perfect. You know, she's the type of woman I'm looking for, all of this stuff. And then one thing, you know, I always loved to dance.
Mm-hmm.
And I always found that a lot of women would say they could dance, but they couldn't.
Oh, no.
And I said to her, hey, she said, I love to dance. I said, oh, good. I know a place that has music tonight. You want to go? So she said, okay. And we went to this club and we were dancing. And I said, wow, she can dance. What more could I ask for? She was, and the relationship, I mean, I said, anyone else in my life, I'm no longer available.
That's
Because I
wonderful.
met the person that I was willing to invest my time in.
Wow. And how long have you been married?
We're together 21 years.
Wow, that's amazing. Do you have any other success stories that you hear about from people who have taken their course?
Yeah, there's a lot of success stories. And the success stories come like one that illustrates a number of different things is there was a woman I worked with. She was an attorney. She said to me, look, I don't need a man to support me. She was telling me all about herself. And I said, okay, what happens when you meet a man? And then she told me about her limits. She said, well, I have 3 elementary school age children, and one of them is special needs. And she said, you know, I meet men, we go out, And then at some point they find out that I have a special needs child and they leave. And I said to her, well, I said, that's because you don't understand. There are people who won't deal with that. So when we put her profile together, we put in her profile that she was a single mom of 3 elementary school-age children, one of which is special needs. When she first saw that, she got a little upset. And I said, give it. I said, let's put it out there. Let's not hide this. And I think it was about 3 months later, she contacted me and said, I met a man and he knows about it right from the beginning and it didn't bother him.
Wow. Wow.
So that's the thing. You know, why hide the things? If you have a physical illness or you have you're diabetic, I said, put that in there because maybe somebody else who's diabetic will pick it up. And now the two of you have each other. You don't have to worry about somebody eating candy and everything else around you when you can.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's, people think that these are things that are wrong with them. And therefore they don't want to tell people that they have a problem.
Well, I would imagine that being upfront, it serves you well in the long run because these things are going to surface anyway.
Yes.
So why not go ahead and be honest about them?
Right. And when they surface, then they're painful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you'd rather reduce the pain thing. And the same thing with the pictures too. Posting pictures, from 10 years ago, that's not exactly what you look like now. I can't tell you how many stories I've heard from my girlfriends who've been doing online dating, and they actually meet the person, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, there was a shadow of the person that was there from the picture, but it was totally opposite." Finding out that that picture is about 15 years old. So why not go ahead and post what's real? Because it's the same. Those days were very short.
Yeah, I mean, but people are prone to do that, put up bad pictures of themselves.
Right. Yeah, I know. You mentioned that before. We're going to come back and talk about a few more tips that you might have for people who are searching for romance. We're going to take a commercial break and we'll be right back with Bill Scalzetti and his Romance by Choice.
Thank you.
Thank you for being such a wonderful listening audience, whether you were listening live or on the replay. And don't forget to like our Facebook page, Making Connections with Allie and Shay, so that you can get notified every time we go live. Do you have a burning message to share with the audience? Contact Alicia Johnson at info@aliciajohnson.com. That's info@ALYSSIAJOHNSON.com with your topic idea and your message to be booked on the show. And if you're an inspirational speaker or a motivator or simply seeking a platform to share your message, contact Miss Alicia Johnson at info@aliciajohnson.com. That's info@ALYSSIAJOHNSON.com to be considered for 30 to 60 minutes of weekly airtime right here on the Making Connections Network. Again, contact Alicia Johnson at info@aliciajohnson.com. That's info@ALYSSIAJOHNSON.com to be considered for 30 to 60 minutes of weekly airtime, your own radio show right here on the Making Connections Network.
Hi, welcome back. My name is Glennis Woods Mullins, and I'm standing in for Allie, and you're listening to Making Connections with Allie. And today we have been graced with the presence of Bill Scalzetti, and he is the founder of Romance by Choice. And we've been talking about all kinds of things that have to do with romance and dating, and ultimately finding that special someone. And of course, this is in commemoration of Valentine's Day. And Bill, I have just a couple more things I want to ask you, since you are the expert on romance. What is considered to be a romantic Valentine sentiment? What's something that someone can do that's romantic for someone on Valentine's Day, especially given the pandemic?
Well, see, I'm glad you brought that up, the pandemic. One of the things I've told many people is that just because we've been home with our partners all the time, that doesn't mean that we need to always be in our sweatpants and sweatshirts. Now, for Valentine's Day, both of you get dressed up just as though you were going to some nightclub. And even though you're going to have dinner at home, put on some nice music, light some candles, have a nice dinner, maybe even get up and dance on the kitchen floor. Okay? But again, this pandemic has created where people tend to become sloppier about their appearance. And that's about the last thing you want to do. Because think about it, before the pandemic, everybody went to work in the mornings, you got up, you saw your spouse for maybe an hour or so, and then you came home, had dinner, a couple hours of TV, and were asleep. Now it's 24/7.
Right.
So you have to remember that, you still have to keep each other's interests alive.
And I love that.
You get sloppy.
Exactly. And I love that because you just gave me a great idea for my husband and I, because he was asking what to do. I'm going to get dressed up, and so is he, and we're going to have romantic dinner at home. I think that would be wonderful, and he would enjoy that. So thank you, Bill. For people who want to find out more about your program and, how to purchase it, where do they go?
They can go to romancebychoice.com. All the information is on my website. I'd be more than happy to set up an interview with the people to see if they'd be a good candidate for the program. And then if they want to, we can begin the program.
And if people have any questions, is there an email address or somewhere they could email you with questions?
romancebychoice.com at optonline.net.
Say it again, please.
Romancebychoice at optonline.net. optonline.net.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for coming by and sharing all of those wisdoms and key learnings in terms of being a romance expert. I am your new fan. I will be reading the articles on your site and getting some ideas and referring some of my girlfriends because they need your help, Bill.
Okay, I'll be happy to help them.
Fantastic. And thank you, everyone who's been listening. It was wonderful that you chose to spend some time here by making connections with Allie. I'm sure Allie will be back next week. My name is Lennis Woods-Mullins, and I'm standing in for Allie. And just remember that through your week, we're sending you love, positivity, and good vibes. Goodbye, everybody.